The Georgetown County School Board welcome you tonight, Tuesday, March 2022, at its regular school board meeting. Will everybody please stand with me for a moment of silence? Thank you. Now we will have Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Tawana Grant and Cadence Gamble from Brownsferry, my people, to say I don't know her name. So without further ado, Ms. Grant.
It is with great pleasure that I introduce my scholar, Cadence Gamble. She is a 10-year-old fifth grader at Brownsferry Elementary and the daughter of Mr. Kareem and Mrs. Haley Gamble. Her favorite subject is math, and her hobbies include riding her four-wheeler, dancing with the infamous Jules, and being a flag girl with the Brownsferry Bengals. Her future aspirations are to be a cosmetologist. You can always find Cadence with her bubbly personality and beautiful smile throughout the halls of Brownsferry as she continues to lead and serve others.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you, Cadence.
Thank you, ma'am.
You have your mother with you. You mind standing? Pleasure.
All right, thank you.
I'll try to remember your daughter's name. Next order of business, Dr. David Hamill.
Good evening, Chairman Lance, members of the board, Mr. Price, district staff, and guests. At this time tonight, I have the honor and privilege of recognizing our 2022 All-State Chorus and Band students. 7 Georgetown County School District choral students have been selected to participate in the South Carolina Music Educators Association All-State Choral Clinic. The clinic will be held this upcoming weekend at Winthrop University. Auditions for the All-State Choral program were virtual this year, and the students were selected from participants who competed statewide. I'd like to commend these superior choral students for excelling in this intensive and demanding vocal experience. At this time, I'm going to recognize 7 Waccamaw High students. I'll be joined at this time by their principal, Mr. Adam George, and choral director, Sylvia Plyler. Students, I'd ask that you please come forward as your name is called. Junior Haley Bench, alto. Graduating junior Adalea Costner, tenor. Senior Lily Jaworowski, soprano. Senior Alston Keister, soprano. Junior Mary Grace Kowalczyk, alto. Senior Laurel Vick, soprano. and Senior Willovic, an alto. At this time, I'd also like to share that Laurel and Willovic were selected to participate in the All-State Choral program all 4 years in high school. Let's give a big round of applause to all these All-State Choral students. And at this time, we're now going to recognize 2 students for All-State Band. 2 of our Georgetown County School District students have been named to the 2022 All-State Band by the South Carolina Band Directors Association. The primary objectives of the South Carolina Band Directors Association are to recognize the achievements, encourage the interest, and enrich the opportunities of band students in South Carolina. The student selection to each All-State Band was based on their January 29th audition. At this time, we'll recognize these 2 students. I'll be joined by their principals, Mr. Adam George and Mr. Craig Stone, and their band directors, Mr. DeAndre Preston and Miss Laura Cameron. First, we'll have Mr. George come down with Mr. Preston. Waccamaw High Senior, Micah Sullivan. Micah, who plays the French horn, was named to the All-State Senior Band. He will participate in the South Carolina All-State Senior Band Clinic on March 11th through the 13th at Furman University. And Micah has been named to All-State Band for 4 consecutive years of high school. And now with Mr. Stone and Miss Cameron, Georgetown High Junior William Gregory. William, a baritone saxophone player, was chosen for the 2022 All-State Jazz Band. He will participate in the South Carolina All-State Jazz Band Clinic this upcoming weekend at Newberry College. And this is William's 2nd year being selected for All-State Jazz Band. Congratulations to both of these students.
Now we're to the public comments or request stage for audiences. All takers come at all. That's a good sign. I don't have any cards, so that means we're all in accord tonight. Next order of business is we have approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that the minutes be accepted as written. Questions? There being none, all those in favor, let it known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Ayes have it, motion's carried. Adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and properly second that the agenda be accepted as presented. Questions? All those in favor, let it known by saying aye.
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 Opposers, nay. Ayes have it. Motion is carried. The agenda is adopted.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I pose a question, a general question about an agenda?
Yes, you get a,
In the past, as far as agenda items are concerned, I guess a better question would be, what is the practice of getting agenda items placed on the agenda?
You presenting,
Well, I'm asking you as the chairman, but I could certainly, defer to the superintendent.
I guess we can stretch it. It might be out of order, but go ahead. Mr. Price?
Yes, sir. Usually what happens with the agenda items, that comes as items of business or interest that's either coming from district or school administration, or requests from the board. So the personnel list that you see here is usually a standing item to have any updates to our personnel list approved. And then other items are relevant items of interest or a business. So if there's a request for an item, it's usually made at a board meeting, and then it's placed on an upcoming agenda.
Okay, but if it's not usual, customary, or historical to ask during a board meeting, is it possible during the week, just like, for instance, maybe hypothetically tomorrow, if I would bring up or request an item to be placed on the agenda for our next meeting, would that be appropriate?
Sure. Typically, I guess if we refer to policy, the way it's written is the chair, along with the superintendent, create the agenda. So if it's shared with either or, then it can be brought up for consideration for future agenda items. Yes, sir.
Okay, because I just want to make sure, not just for me personally, but colleagues, if they feel strongly where they wanted an agenda item on there that they wish to be discussed, not necessarily voted on, but just discussed, I think that would be appropriate.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know that that was in order, out of order, since we missed the question part of that. In either case, since we're there, are there any other board members who have a comment on this? Okay, moving on to action items. We have Dr. Milton and Mr. Jenkins to deal with the personnel, the E list. Do you have anything to? That being said, the administration recommends approval of the personnel list as presented.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that the aforementioned personnel list be adopted as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just a moment of old age. Those opposed? Ayes have it. So the motion is carried, and the personnel list is approved as presented. Now we have Ms. Waits again. Ms. Waits? Calendar, traditional school calendar list for 22-23. They love you on the calendar list, Ms. Waits. So let's try it again.
All right. Good evening, Chairman Lance, members of the board, Mr. Price, district staff, and guests. The 2022-23 proposed calendar was shared with parents and staff on Wednesday, February 16th for comments and feedback. Of the 63 responses received, the majority of them were favorable. However, some concerns were expressed. 25 either loved or agrees with the calendar, and there were 38 that are considered neutral. Some of the concerns that were expressed, 16 were in regard to the half-day staff development days. They prefer Fridays versus Wednesdays. Some parents feel that it's easier to take a Friday off rather than a Wednesday. Some express that it seems like it's a waste. Students don't take it seriously. There were 8 concerns regarding that would prefer the first semester to end prior to winter break. 8 that were not in favor of Monday as a start date. 1 that was not in favor of the modified year-round calendar because of custody issues. 1 that was not in favor of the early start because of summer jobs for both students and staff. There was 1 that was concerned about having Thanksgiving week off because of childcare issues. 2 that expressed concerns about Veterans Day not being a full day off, and 2 that stressed concern about the early start and end times, hoping that it would go back to the pre-COVID start times. This information was presented to Cabinet on Tuesday, February 22nd, and no changes were deemed necessary. So it is being brought to you this evening for your approval.
Question, anybody for Ms. Waits? The administration recommends the approval of the 2023 traditional school calendar as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the administration recommendation for the aforementioned school calendar. Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose? Ayes have it. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waits. Now we have action item 3, policy ICA. Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And ladies and gentlemen of the board, at our last board meeting, we gave a presentation on a proposed policy ICA adjustment that came from our calendar committee. And based on feedback from the last presentation, we've adjusted the school calendar portion of this sample policy to reflect our practice and our makeup days section to reflect our current practice. So the new portion for school calendar, it says the superintendent with the calendar committee comprised of administration, teachers, support staff, and community members will prepare the school calendar. The calendar will set forth starting dates, ending dates, days of attendance for students, days of in-service and organizational meetings for teachers, holidays and vacation periods, days of reports to parents and legal guardians, and other schedules of importance to the staff and public. The superintendent or designee will present the proposed calendar to the board for approval in the spring of each year. And then with makeup days, the district shall designate annually at least 3 days within the school calendar to be used as makeup days in the event of snow, extreme weather conditions, or other disruptions requiring schools to close. This is according to state mandate. And then the district will utilize e-learning makeup days when possible. So we bring this to your consideration and for approval.
I have a question or a comment.
Sir?
Good work. I'm asking, we implemented in the 2021 calendar of the half-days, professional days for teachers.
Yes, sir.
Should that be added into this policy? Because overwhelmingly, our teachers and our administrators really like those days, to be able to protect that as we move forward.
If that is the desire of the board, we can make that amendment and bring it back for final approval at the next meeting. Okay.
Yep.
So with that said, we will remove the recommendation to approve this policy and bring it back for another consideration at our next meeting.
Sorry about that, but I don't think it's important to add.
I was going to throw it out, and you said nay or yeah, and it's voted down, or I voted up, and we vote on.
Or unless we wanted to make a motion with that amendment to be added, we could go ahead and
Because it has to
approve
go-
it.
Does it go through 3 readings or 2?
Ms. Thompson?
You can make an amendment tonight, and then it'll be fine for the second reading next time. You don't have to bump it back.
So we could, right, so the amendment could come tonight with first reading approval with the proposed
do that.
amendment,
Yep.
and then the final draft will be brought back next time for second and final approval.
I would like to add that amendment to that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any?
Well, I have a question.
No, it's not.
But it's not a question to the amendment.
It's no
a
problem.
question to the
It's
original
not out there
policy.
yet, so keep talking.
Okay. My question is for the superintendent. I know if the proposed calendar is presented to us for approval in the spring of each year, and I know this past we were trying to present a 3-year calendar and didn't do that. So in the future, regardless of whether we do a 3-year calendar, bring back a 3-year calendar or a 1-year calendar, is the spring always the best time of year to do that?
That's a great question, and the spring is loosely defined. It could mean spring semester, and I believe we've checked on this to clarify that. Our goal will be to continue to bring it to you in January, which would be considered the spring semester, whenever we return from winter break. But without specifically stating January, we would not have to vote to suspend the policy temporarily if for some reason we're not ready for final approval in January.
Okay.
So this gives us flexibility, but the goal would still be to bring it to you for approval in January.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
One other comment. If we are looking to get some approval for the year-round school moving forward, or our amended year, we certainly would want to do that earlier than January of next year.
Yes, ma'am.
Therefore, would we not begin in the spring of this year, begin having those discussions and those meetings so that we would, by the beginning of next school year, have some discussion so that parents would be able to go ahead and make those plans?
Absolutely. I think our goal at this point was to get the 22-23 calendar approved, and then we can turn our attention to having those conversations about that modified year-round calendar on whether or not that's a good fit for Georgetown County. So yes, ma'am, we would go ahead and begin that now, not wait until January to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good question.
Anybody else? Other questions? Comments? With that being said, the administration recommends the approval of the 22-23 traditional school calendar as presented with the ongoing amendments. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the amended school calendar proposal presented tonight. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Nay? Ayes have it. First reading approved. All right. Action item number 4.
Chairman Lance, if you don't mind, if I could interrupt, please.
Sure you can.
You reapproved action item 2, but it should be action item 3. Administration recommends first reading of approval ICA with the amendment as presented.
Okay. All right, let's see, can we get out of this? Having heard an appropriate correction to the chair regarding replacing 22nd, 23rd school calendar as opposed to the intended recommendation of first approval for policy ICA with the appropriate amendments. Can I get a motion for that policy? They have a motion.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So moved. Oh. He was making the correction.
Making a correction.
Okay.
I believe what Mr. Jenkins pointed out was there was a reference to action item
okay.
number 2, and it should have been action item number 3.
Oh, okay.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, since you didn't want to. All those in favor of that motion, please let it known by being saying aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Nay. Ayes have it. I unscramble the scramble. The motion is carried. Now we are back to repeal of KNBA, complaints about instructional materials. Ms. Thompson.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chairman Lance, Mr. Price, members of the board. We have several policies, administrative rule, and an exhibit on the agenda for tonight. And I think they kind of they do sound confusing, and they are confusing, but it boils down to a pretty simple matter, and that is that back in the fall, there were districts across the state that had textbooks in their, or excuse me, not textbooks, but books in their libraries that were of questionable or controversial nature. And at that time, the governor stated that he wanted there to be a method for parents or community members to lodge concerns about those things that were in their library. And with that, the State Department and the State Board of Education crafted a model policy for school districts to use so that parents, community members, students, teachers, whoever could lodge concerns in a kind of a uniform fashion about things that were in their local school libraries. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece, though, is that we basically already had that policy in place. We had a method in our board policy in the K section, these KNBA policies, that were actually already very similar to what the State Department put out in its final model rule back in January. So we were kind of ahead of the game, but to make sure that we match completely what the State Department and State Board have asked for school districts to implement, we are trying to fully repeal our policies, but adopt the state board policies, which are almost identical. So it seems like we're getting rid of a process, but we really aren't. We're putting an almost identical one in place. It's just a kind of a beefed up form. The form has a few more questions on it for people to ask. And the policy part consolidates what we had in a policy and an administrative rule, puts it into one document as opposed to two separate documents. So it's kind of a mess to look at, but it boils down to we are simply asking to adopt the state's model, the State Board and State Department's model, rather than continuing with our model, just in case there's ever a question of wording or anything like that. We did receive a memo from the State Department of Education highly encouraging all districts to consider adopting the model policy and form that were put forth, and that was why we thought it was best to use their model, even though it's very similar to our current practices. So that's what we have. And that was sort of a summary of the next few items. Are there any questions about the summary before I move on? Okay. So the first item is repeal of policy KNBA. And our current policy, KNBA, is complaints about instructional materials. And this simply gives the plan for what we would have done and what we will still do, but it's people will submit a request for reconsideration of instructional or library materials. We're not changing the practice, we're just changing the wording a little bit. So we would repeal KNBA, and that would be one reading for that piece on that one. And then we're going to actually replace it here in just a minute with another one if you so choose. But this is KNBA that's up there. Thank you very much. And that's our current one. It was issued in 1999. Very, very similar to what you'll see in the model policy from the State Department. Any questions? Okay, so that's my first action item, is asking you all to give first and final reading approval of repealing this KNBA.
Do I have a motion?
I've got a question.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It says issued 199 and then rescinds new? It's not what it says?
Yes, sir, it is what it says. If I had ever we have several policies that have that, and to be honest with you, I've researched it and never understood why they were written that way.
Okay, are we voting on that policy?
You are voting to rescind or repeal that one completely so that we can replace it completely with the school board or the state Department's policy.
Yeah, we're on place on the street.
Does that make sense?
It does.
It's mucky.
It does. The reason why I'm asking, because I see some language in there that is archaic and needed to, in my opinion, needed to be revised. But if this is being rescinded, then there's no need for that.
And that's correct. And I should have also mentioned that Dr. Giles and Ms. Smith had actually created a committee to reword all of this, and they had reworded all of it to get some of that archaic language. And at the same time, contemporaneously, we received the model from the State Department. So we were getting rid of it, and then we got a fancier one.
Thank you.
So is the state one available for
It
us
is.
to compare?
Yes, sir. It is also in your packet. It's listed under action item. Let me make sure I'm telling you right. Action item number 6, and it's entitled Model Policy for Library/Media Center Materials Selection and Reconsideration Process.
Okay.
Are we good? The administration recommends the first reading approval of repealing policy KNBA regarding complaints about instructional material as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Chairman can do that, by the way.
Second.
All right. All right. It's been moved and properly second that we accept the repeal of policy KNBA complaints and instructional material. Do I have a motion? Oh, already been past that. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, none. Ayes have it. Motion is accepted.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to number 5, this is we're asking for the first and final approval to repeal KNBA-R, and that is almost identical to what you just read, and Dr. Cefr, it has that same issued and rescinds that I can't interpret for you. But in any case, this is directing us to what the committee's duties and functions would be to review materials that are questionable and that have been questioned by somebody, and that is also almost verbatim in what's going to be in item number 6 for the model policy. So ours was just kind of chunked into different pieces, whereas theirs is all in one piece. So we're asking for the repeal of this one to be replaced in just a moment.
Administration recommends the first and final reading approval of repealing Administrative Rule KNBA-R, complaints about instructional materials as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the administrative recommendation regarding repeal of Administrative Rule KNBA-R, complaints about instructional materials. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposers? Nay. Ayes have it. Motion is carried.
Thank you. And item number 6, this is where we are asking you to formally make first of 2 readings of the, first of 2 readings of revising policy IIAC, which is our current media center material selection adoption policy, that we would whole cloth replace with the model policy. So this one isn't being exactly repealed, it's just being fully replaced with the new wording from the State Board. And again, using Dr. Cefr's words, some of those collections that were to be used as consultations are also quite archaic and aren't even in existence any longer.
Action item 7.
I believe that was number 6 still. Sorry, I'm taking a while.
That was 6. All right. Action item 6. Revision of policy AAC, Media Center Material Selection and Adoption. The administration recommends first reading approval of revising policy IIAC, Media Center Material Selection Adoption by fully replacing the text with that of the model policy created by South Carolina Board of Education as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accepted the aforementioned policy. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposes? None, ayes have it. Motion's carried.
Thank you. And the last one on this set is action item number 7, and that's revision of KNBA-E, request for reconsideration of instructional materials. And we're just asking to fully replace our current form with the new form, which they ask for the same information, basically. Who are you? Why do you not like this book? What do you think? Is there anything good about it? What's bad about it? Why don't you like it? And basically, is there something that you would recommend as a substitution? And they both basically ask those same questions, just sort of in different formats. So we're just asking for the full replacement of our form with the model form.
Administration recommends first and final reading approval of revising Exhibit K and BA-E, request for consideration of instructional materials with the model form by fully replacing the text and with that of a model form created by the South Carolina Board of Ed entitled Reconsideration of Instructional Materials form as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and probably accepted that we accept the revision of KNBAE, request for consideration of instructional materials. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? None. Ayes have it. Motion is carried.
Thank you. And we'll bring the remaining pieces of that needed second reading, we'll bring those back to you at the upcoming meeting. Okay. The next thing that I have on the agenda for my name is the Memorandum of Understanding between the district and the Village Group. I know most of you are very familiar with the good works of the Village Group. They provide after-school and summer services for students in the Carvers Bay community, specifically the Plantersville community over the summer, but they do serve the whole Carvers Bay area, really the whole county, and sometimes I think they've had kids come to the summer program from the whole country. So they do great work. This is not there's no changes necessarily. I think we actually are allowing them use of the printer that we didn't used to allow, but I think everything else is very similar for the memorandum of agreement between us and the Village Group. So we're just asking to extend what we've been doing for years with that community partner.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How frequently do we renew these memorandums of understanding?
This one is supposed to be done on an annual basis. I believe that we missed this one. And to be honest, Mr. Gaskins, I can't remember when we should have done it, but
Do we renew this annually with the other groups, like Teach My People and other groups?
well, it all depends on how the memorandum is worded and what their specific services are, particularly and what their needs are with their granting entity. So I think the Village Group has to have theirs renewed annually for their 21st Century grant. I don't believe that the Village Group has the same requirement, and they serve our students a little bit differently. So it really does just depend on the terms of the MOU, but we can, you know.
I'm just curious.
Oh, okay.
Just curious.
Okay. It just kind of depends on who's doing what and how and what their needs are.
I can see that since they're applying for a grant, that they would need this, yes.
Yes, sir.
And we usually do actually renew those because those that use our facilities for their programs, those are usually renewed annually because they generally have to have that in order to get nonprofit money and other things.
Most of the time, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And they just don't come up on the same, it's not that all of them are in June or all of them are in December or anything, so it just kind of filters throughout the year, I guess.
Other questions for Ms. Thompson? Not? The administration recommends the approval of the memorandum of understanding between Georgetown County School District and the Village Group as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, it's been moved and properly second that we accept the memorandum of agreement between Georgetown County School District and the Village Group. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? Ayes have it. So the motion is carried.
Should I move on to my final item?
Pardon?
I have one more thing, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I promise, I'm almost finished, sir.
no, it's all right. I'm all right.
Thank you.
Patient man.
Thank you. The final item that I have is the renewal of the Coastal Montessori Charter School contract. As the Coastal Montessori's chartering entity, the district has to either vote to renew or not renew the charter school's contract every 10 years. That's why they were here at the last meeting to present their information to us. And this is their contract that they have asked for you all, that their board has asked for you as their chartering entity to approve. And I am officially the middleman on this one. So, but I'm happy to field any questions and see what I can do with them. Yes, sir, Mr. Gaskins.
Chairman, may I speak?
Sure.
Just got a couple questions and a couple comments. I had the opportunity to visit Coastal Montessori a few weeks ago, and I was very encouraged about all the good work that is happening there. I wish it were a program that we could replicate throughout many other places in the district. Being new to the board and not totally understanding the role of a sponsor and the role of the school, reading through this contract, it sort of raised some questions. First of all, and I think might be a question for you, on page 3.
Yes, sir.
Under Roman numeral 8, provide fair, consistent, accurate information about the school's academic performance. That's part of, what does that really mean?
I mean, I think I don't know that I'm the best person to answer exactly what the intent of that is, Mr. Gaskins. That's a great question. You know, I think that that's probably pulled directly from statute, that the sponsor shall do that, what's actually contained in the law. And so it's certainly up to interpretation. Is there something
I'm just curious, what does it mean? What is it that the district has to do there, or if anything?
You have a director back there. I don't have any problems.
I'm happy to defer that to
If you wanted to
Owens
refer that.
and determine, or to Mr. Price,
Got it.
to determine what the meaning of the provide fair, consistent, accurate information about the school's academic performance. To the same extent, the same manner the sponsor shares information about other charter schools.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, if I may, that particular paragraph seems to excuse me, compare or contrast other charter schools. It says shares information about other charter schools sponsored by the sponsor. So my interpretation of that, and I could be wrong on this, suppose there was more than one charter school, you know, one shouldn't be placed in a more favorable light than another. That's my interpretation. I'm glad you raised that issue because that's very interesting.
Right.
I think that's a good question.
That's my interpretation.
I think that's a good interpretation of it. And again, that's pulled directly from the statute at 594055 for districts that have more than one charter.
Yeah, so they must be doing great because they're the only charter school.
My second question comes on page 6 under the school's responsibility with academic achievement. You know, last week you guys did a great job talking about your overall goals for that, but very specifically, it says that the school shall meet or make reasonable progress toward meeting or exceeding the performance goals as described in the charter application. I don't know what those goals are in the charter application. Then it goes on a little bit further in that, there it says, let me find it, making reasonable progress toward improved academic achievement for students as measured by performance framework developed by the school or the sponsor staff and approved by the school board and the sponsor's board.
certainly if you feel that the goals need to be included in the contract itself or as an addendum to the contract, we can ask the charter school for that, if you don't feel that they're sufficiently addressed here.
I just don't know if there are those goals that are in the original charter, which I have not seen. And with that said, I would love for us to investigate that, and I would like to make a motion that we table this until we get some further answers to those questions.
And those are all great questions that I'm happy to pose towards the charter school and their outside counsel that they have.
Nothing to do how I feel about your school back there, but it's something that as the sponsor, that I think the ultimate responsibility for their success falls on us.
Yes, sir.
Not that we want to control what you guys do over there.
So if you were to make a motion about goals, specifically, you're looking for,
What does that say in the charter?
okay. And those probably need to be updated regardless of whether what they said 10 years ago versus what they say today. Okay.
Can we just go ahead and take care of the renewal of the contract and pass and depend upon Mr. Price to confirm at our next meeting that those goals I thought I heard the other night that they were throwing out are the same goals that are in the contract. You know, I don't particularly see why we have to just table the renewal of the contract because of something that is probably out there that you may not have seen and that I may have seen and he may have seen, and he even worked with them for a year or two? Okay. So that's just a suggestion, and then you hold his hand for that, all right? We'll squeeze in.
Well, I have made the motion that we table it until we get that information.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
No, I was going to ask if that information, wasn't that presented at the last meeting? That presentation which included the performance goals?
But were those performance goals that were presented?
Yes, it was as part of that presentation. When I looked at it early today, they did list those performance goals.
Right.
Yeah.
I did go back and look at it, but how were those goals measured? That's my question.
That's a good question.
Okay, that's a
And I
good
know some of you have been around longer than I have, may have some institutional knowledge about that I don't have.
If I may, Coastal Montessori Charter School, the students take the same end-of-course tests, right? And I know at one time, and Ms. Hamill, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but at one time we had a discussion about whether or not, this was in the early stage of the charter school, if they were teaching, we know about the Montessori methodology, I got that, we all know that. But were they actually teaching the standards, because the students were going to be tested on those standards? I know we had did you remember that, Ms. Hamill? Would you like to comment on that? Because you certainly played a major role in that.
I will share with you that the standards, the way they are sequenced, are different in the Montessori program than they are in state standards. For instance, when they shared the math achievement last week, and they shared that at this grade level specific, that the students might not have done as well because the next year they had those makeups and gaps. But now that we are measuring, and I understand Mr. Gaskin's question, because now that we're measuring, for instance, our interventionists that we're using in our schools, and we're measuring our performance very much more closely up to the time of tests, those kinds of things, that could play into the question as well as to where we are. But state standards are being accomplished, but they may not be in the sequence, because that's the conversation that we had that we really had a difficult time coming to grips with. And especially when we were giving those tests every year in those areas, and then the scores were skewed. Yes, sir.
Anybody else before I take this motion through?
If I may, I was just going back through the presentation that Ms. Gray and her team made last week, and looking at that, there are 4 specific charter goals that were referenced. Charter goal number 1 was to narrow the achievement gap across all subject areas between lower and higher socioeconomic status students. And they gave some data on that. Charter goal number 2, students at CMCS will demonstrate yearly academic progress expected for their grade level based on national norms. I believe the data that was presented there compared to district scores rather than national norms. Charter goal number 3, students at CMCS will read on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And they gave a data point on that. And then charter goal number 4 was involving the Montessori method.
Right, yeah, I do remember that. I think what concerned me is measured by a performance framework developed by the school and the sponsor staff. Maybe a definition for that. I will rescind my motion, but I would love to get information, provide more information on that from the charter school.
What was your question?
Asking for your question.
My question, what is the performance framework that was developed by the school, or will be developed by the school and the sponsor staff?
Chairman Lance, board members, Mr. Price, excuse me, there is very little that we can do to the structure of the Montessori model. So their performance framework is going to be centered around the Montessori model, so we can't actually control their performance framework. Ms. Gray and I had a conversation on last week about the data that was presented on last week, and we talked about how that could be presented in future meetings. So one of the things we talked about when you are comparing, they should be comparing to state norms and national norms, and Ms. Gray understood that. So basically, there is nothing more that we can actually do because their framework, their instructional framework guides everything that they do. And as Ms. Hamill stated, they're teaching state standards. They're just sequenced differently from how we teach them, but they are assessed on SC Ready and SC Pass. And of course, everything that we assess on, they are assessed the same way.
Right, I get that.
There's a specific reference in the charter that I believe what Mr. Gaskins is alluding to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a specific reference to a performance framework. And what he's asking for is to be able to see what that performance framework is. I think that's what he's asking for clarity about.
Yeah, clarity on the performance.
I am not 100% sure what that is in reference to, but I'm willing to say that's probably a misquote of words. It should be centered around the Montessori model. That's their framework.
Right.
So that probably just an error in the original charter application. I'm not a Montessorian, but but when we talked about framework, that's what their framework. We can't really adjust their framework because it's very much set.
Right.
Like we have a balanced literacy framework and frameworks, for things of that nature.
I haven't read the charter. I just looking at that wording there that really just threw me off.
Yes. So we can actually definitely look into that, but I think it's just going to be some rewording that needs to be done to make sure the charter is renewed.
Mr. Gaskins, make sure you have a block of time, because that's about 300 or 400 pages, that original charter.
Night reading.
You can find it on the website. It's really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we moving on?
We're going to do a motion.
Or do I need to go look up and find Dr. Marie?
Well, that was item number 9, and the administration was recommending approval of the charter school contract as presented. I don't know if Mr. Gaskins would still like to make his motion, certainly his prerogative to do so.
I rescinded my motion.
Fair enough.
Thank you for the help with the clarification.
We're ready to move forward, I believe.
Oh, all right, it never went through the second, so it was not a big deal there, all right?
Nope,
I
we're
was just
good to
waiting.
go.
All right. The administrator recommends the approval of the Coastal Montessori Public Charter School renewal as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that the Coastal Charter Montessori School contract be renewed. All those in favor, let it known by saying aye.
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 Opposes? None. Let's have it.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Dr. Lance?
Yeah, sure.
If I may just bring this up, I want to thank, thank you. I want to thank Ms. Easterling and Ms. Gray and her team for providing us with that data that we requested at the last meeting. We all received a
Oh, yeah,
copy of it.
we
Thank you
did.
very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that timely
Yes.
sending of that data. Thank you.
Okay, breezing along. Let's talk about money. Ms. Johnson?
Dr. Lance, board members, Mr. Price. At our last meeting, we had our auditor here, and we are just basically asking you to approve the audit as recommended by administration. And if you have any questions, though, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
Administration recommends the approval of the 2021 CEFR audit report as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the administration approval of the 2021 CFR audit as presented. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposes? None. Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Motion carried. That's another one there now. Now we have Ms. Lisa Johnson. Ackerman. Ackerman. I hadn't seen her so long.
Good evening, Chairman Lance, members of the board, Mr. Price. Gosh, all that was new. Whew. Harris Darver with Darver Kelly, just to echo what Lisa Johnson just said, was here a couple weeks ago, presented the agreed upon procedures for what we used to call the procurement audit. We have a fancy new name now. Presented that report to all of you with no findings, and now we're asking for approval of the audit this evening, or our agreed upon procedures. We're asking for that approval this evening because we do have to report annually to the State Fiscal Accountability Authority. They actually govern the procurement in South Carolina, so we have to submit that board approval to them. So we're requesting that approval this evening.
Anybody came up with any brilliant questions since our last discussion of procurement? Okay, having heard any. Administration recommends the approval of the 2021 procurement agreed upon procedure report as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly second that we accepted the approval of the 2021 procurement agreement upon procedure report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Nay. Ayes have it. Motion is carried.
Thank you. The next action item is mine as well, and it is for a contract award for the artificial turf for the athletic fields. And if it pleases the board, Mr. Bob Sabire and I are going to tag team that this evening. I'm going to turn it over to him if that's okay with the board. I'm going to turn it over to him and ask him to talk through the project, talk through the schedule, and then I'll step back up for the action item if there's any questions on contracting and that kind of thing. If that's acceptable?
Good evening, Chairman Nance, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board. Pleasure to be here tonight to give you a briefing on the artificial turf field. Photos here give you Benedict College and Spring Valley. That's the product that we're recommending we use at the 4 fields at Georgetown County School District. Spring Valley is just one of 4 fields that Richland II selected this field. And part of the reason we selected this particular surface is it's a woven product. It came originally with a 10-year warranty, and although one of the other competitors later raised their to 10 years, originally it was 8 years. We feel this is a super product, and we think it's a durable product. And part of the difference with this, it's a woven product. It just looks good on the field, and it wears good. We did a lot of research. We visited a lot of fields. This particular installer installed field for us up at Spartanburg 7. They've doing fields down in Beaufort right now. They've done a lot of fields in South Carolina. This particular product has hundreds of installations throughout the country. So we feel very good about the selection that we made with this. Current schedule calls for us to install Georgetown High School and Waccamaw High School fields this summer. That would be starting right after graduation, early June. Turn those 2 fields over in mid-August. And then we would do Carvers Bay and Andrews High School starting after football season. That's mid part of November, and have those ready for turnover in February of 2023. I know a lot more about artificial turf fields than I did, 2 months ago. I could probably go on for an hour, but if you've got any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But again, I think you have the information on the decision we made. This is within the budget that we established. Some of the issues that came up that probably increased the cost on this is that we had to relocate all of the track events within the field. They're all at different elevations. These fields are lower, they don't have a crown, and a lot of those track events were high compared to the track, so they all need to be lowered. So all those events need to be redone. We also have a lot of stone that goes into this new system here. That stone is having to be trucked from Columbia, which raises the cost out here a little bit, and then inflation has caused that a little bit to go up with fuel cost. But we had a lot of negotiation with the 3 proposals that we had on this. We had a lot of people drop their price. A lot of people came in and gave us certain advantages. And this particular firm here, what really helped close the deal is they came in and offered us a 10-year maintenance agreement on all 4 fields for 10 years. Well, they'll come and do a maintenance check on those fields once a year. It'll be sometime in the spring. That's generally about a $2,800 fee. One of the things that when our research, we talked to one of the other school districts that had artificial turfs, and they were going to go and implement a third party to come and maintain their fields because they have found that over time, if they're not maintained well, the field deteriorates. And they were talking about they had different ADs. Some of them took really good care of the field, some didn't, and there was a big difference for those who didn't, so they're outsourcing that. So although this seems like a minor item, for the life of the term of this field, that's a big item we thought for the district's interest.
So, the Spring Valley and Benedict, do they have the same material on the field?
The same material on the field. It's called iron turf. And this particular turf product, the weight on this product was more than the other competitors that we looked at. And again, it's got a 10-year warranty. It's a woven product, which has certain advantage to it.
Okay.
But it is the same field that we'll have
All
on all
right,
4
next part of my
fields.
question is, do you know how long these fields were there? And have they had to do any serious maintenance work within the 10-year warranty time?
The field at Benedict was a fairly new field. They haven't done anything. The fields at Spring Valley, they've been in there for a couple of years, and they've had some issues to begin with, but once they address those installation issues, they've been very happy with the product and very happy with the field.
Okay, you mentioned something about $2,800, correct me, yearly maintenance check?
They have, that's part of this price. They threw that in at the end, and when they
Okay,
come
so
and they do
that's already included in
that's
the price?
included in this, yes, sir.
For each field?
They gave us that at no additional cost. We'd already gotten a price from them. They threw that in to help close the deal.
Okay,
But
thanks.
that involves them coming and inspecting the surface. They run a magnet over the entire field to pick up any metal products. Evidently, that happens frequently over the, the life of the product.
So if they come in and find something, they're not gonna come back and ask us for another $1 million, right?
No, they're gonna come and fix it. They're warranting that field for 10 years.
Okay.
And they're gonna fix anything, but they're gonna come and inspect that field and hopefully find any imperfection they find, they'll come and fix at that point, as well as groom the field. There's a number of other items they do to help extend the life of that product.
All right, thank you, Bob.
I have a question. First, I want to thank you for how you explained and shared the pros and cons of each. It made reading through the proposal very easy. And the question that I have is, how did you decide which schools to target first? You're doing 2 schools this year and 2 schools next year. How did you decide which ones to tackle first?
Part of the reason is that the field at Waccamaw has the most use, is that they use it a lot for soccer and also for lacrosse. So we saw that as a much higher use field, and that's why we're trying to target that was close to Georgetown, and that was primarily the perspective, is that was a higher use field,
Right.
trying to use that as the basis for getting started there.
Thank you.
I have a question. What, I think you've mentioned this, what's the life expectancy of this field?
Well, that's an interesting question, is that we're originally told, you can expect 10 years out of these fields. The inspections that we did, we looked at a lot of fields. We saw some fields that are 10, 11 years old. We saw some that are 6 and 7 years old. And these fields last longer than 10 years. If you take care of them, they can last longer than 10 years. And we saw one that was 11, 12 years old. Didn't look worn out to us, but they're looking at replacing that the next year. And again, that is not, we think this product is going to last longer than that. I have not seen any of the iron turf fields that are that old, but this product is much heavier than the others. A lot of these other fields are monofilament that don't last as long. This is a slit film, which is supposed to be more durable and last longer. So if we take care of these fields, they very well may last longer than 10 years. I don't think they'll last 15 years, but getting 12, 13, or 14 years doesn't sound unreasonable in the research that we've done, talking to other owners of other fields. And then the other part of this is that when the field is worn out, the cost is roughly half of what it is. A large part of this cost is removing all the existing turf. We have to dig down about 8 inches. It's 4,000 to 5,000 cubic yards of dirt that needs to be moved out, and then they come in and put stone and put a drainage system in, and then it's just the turf and the infill that goes on top of that. So when it comes to replace it the next time, the cost will be significantly lower than what it is now.
Well, Bob, I got a question. Do these guys basically keep their grass practice fields, maybe limit the use of practice on the fields?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Maybe limit the use of practicing on it every day to, use the grass fields. Do a lot of guys, you think, because we got practice fields at all our ball fields, maybe they practice on their fields. But, you got to practice on it sometime to get used to it. We're talking about lifelong, or maybe saving it a little while is what I'm saying.
I'm not sure if I understand your question, but one of the other things that we found in talking to a lot of owners on this, and one of the bigger benefits I was unaware of, is that you should get a lot more usage out of this field. is that my experience with natural turf fields where people take a lot of care of them, they don't allow any practicing, they don't allow band on there, they don't allow
Then
anything
you
on there.
understand my question,
But
that's what I was saying.
Okay, but these fields, and we talked to a lot of owners that already had this, they get a lot more usage out of these fields. And that, you know, a lot of them say that they rent the fields out, they get a lot of requests to come in because it's hard to wear these fields out. And I think some of them said is that the baseball team, if no one else is using it and the field's wet, they'll let the baseball team come on and practice on these fields. And my understanding is that the biggest wear on these fields is the crease in front of the lacrosse goal, because that gets the most wear. But other than people playing football, soccer, having band practice on there, having graduations on there, there's no limit to the use you can get out of these fields. And in fact, a lot of, I'm thinking a lot of these other fields, you know, they, in some of the Division I schools, you know, they have thousands of events on those fields. So they get a lot of usage. The ones up at Doug Shaw Stadium up in Horry County, they have hundreds of events out there. They get a lot of use out of that field. So I think the fields that we have here, it'd be hard to get the use that they had, but I think you'll find that there's a lot more use that the school district will get out of these fields and use them a lot more than what you've used them before. Does that help answer your question, or did I go off track?
Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure you understood my question. I was saying, would it help if the teams still practice on the grass field some? That was my question to you.
No, there's no reason they can't practice on these fields and get the utmost use on these fields.
Okay, well then, use it every day if you have to.
That's right. And again, I don't think you can wear the field out with practice. Everyone I know says they practice on it, they use as much as possible.
Okay, thanks. You've been doing the research.
The present drainage system that we have, you know, the French drain, are they pretty much intact? In other words, are we going to require a lot more work for our present drainage system around the grass fields?
No, you know, the trench drain that goes around, that'll remain in place.
Okay.
That'll be untouched. They put a concrete curb around the edge of that. The field all goes inside of that. And that drain, you know, as the field works right now, you know, there's a big crown on the field and the water works to that. Some of it goes in the ground, but the water works to those drains. These fields are different. They have a much lower crown. They're much flatter. There's a drainage system under there, and there's a separate drainage system that runs it out to the pond. So the drainage on there will be a lot better than it was before. And again, you'll get a lot more use out of that field.
Cool.
And also, you know, with the artificial surface, you don't have to cut any grass. You don't have any fertilizer to put down. You have no top dressing that you have to put down. And watering, I know one time, Bob, we visited, I think
Carver's
it was-
Bay?
No, well, no, sir, I think it was Spring Valley.
Okay, right.
And they were actually putting some water there, but when I went to Doug Shaw Stadium and spoke with those folks, they said that they didn't require any water on their field. They said that it's summertime, it got real hot, and they had to kind of cool it down, but at Spring Valley, they said that. But at Horry, you know, with Doug Shaw Field, they said they haven't had that issue.
We talked to a number of people about that, and there's different infills, but we talked to a number of people about the rubber infill that we have, and we all asked about that because we're aware of that issue. Nobody said that they're having to do anything different with the heat there.
Okay, so, you know, because I remember these last-minute calls about cutting grass, you know, like on a Thursday evening, go out there and cut grass, so you won't have to worry about that. One more question, and I appreciate the work all of you have done in the maintenance department, and you in particular. On these NFL fields and college fields, sometimes you'll see somebody get tackled in these, for lack of a better term, little rubber pellet type things.
Yes, sir.
Go flying up.
Yes, sir.
Are they required on these fields as well?
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of this field, and that's part of the grooming process, is that'll tend to migrate. But you know, if you groom the field, you bring that back up and spread it back around. But what you see on, you know, Saturday and Sunday, that's the same product, same field that we're going to have.
Okay, thank you.
That's what provides the safety factor. There's all kinds of technical criteria in how safe these fields are, and that has to do a lot with it, that rubber.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and but this is a popular topic here.
I guess my question is for Ms. Ackerman. Did we do a cost analysis on this, what it would save our district?
I actually did not handle that portion, but
Oh,
I'll
okay.
take that.
We didn't do a cost analysis, but if you just purely did this on a 10-year lifespan and what you spend on the fields now, it would not be worth it. I'm just saying that. But if you take it in consideration that the field's going to last longer than 10 years, that the next time we do it, it's half that cost, and then you look at it as the increased usage to get out of this field, that's where we saw the biggest benefit of this. And the last component of this, we haven't really talked about, is the safety of the field, is that a lot of people, you know, you read things about, you know, some of these college, you know, or pros prefer natural turf to artificial turf, and you hear about accidents and everything, or people getting injured. I've talked to an independent safety firm. They do a lot of testing, and actually, they said a lot of the research on this is done in Europe, because there's a lot more use of artificial fields out there and a lot more data and research. His analysis, there's no difference between natural turf and artificial turf. But one of the problems with natural turf is maintaining it. And Dr. Cafaro, you remember you were on that trip that we saw Spring Valley, how well that field looked. We thought it was artificial turf. It was natural turf. They have a separate team, and that's all they do is work on that field. They don't allow any practice on there. They don't allow band on there. They just allow games on there to keep that field. But after it rains and you play on it, it tears that field up, and it's not as safe as it was. And I go back, and again, I may go on, but Alabama had an artificial field. They went back to a natural turf field. But one thing that Alabama does is that every year they completely take that field apart, resod it, and put in a whole new field every year. So in looking at the cost analysis of this, when you look at the increased usage, the cost over a longer time than 10 years, and the safety factor, there's a big benefit on this field that's hard to put in dollars and cents.
I asked the question because I've heard from a few of my constituents about this, who are, why are we spending this amount of money on this? I just want to have something I can go back and respond to.
And I think it's a good question, and I'll be honest with you, so when I first heard about this, I was somewhat skeptical, but the more research I did, the more I think this is a big benefit for the school district in more ways than just, you know, not having to do, you know, the cutting the grass, not having to do the lines. The lines are permanent.
Yeah, the human work to be done too.
Right.
has a lot to
There's
do
a
with
lot on there, and then to keep that field in good shape and safe takes a lot of effort.
Okay.
So I hope that answers your question, but I think this is a big benefit for the district, and I think that overall, you're going to get increased usage of this field. I think it's its biggest benefit, and talking to other owners, that's really what they talked about, is how much more usage they got of the field.
Quick comment, you might mention that it's funded through the savings accrued from the bond program, so.
That's correct. That's one of the benefits we've had of, you know, having such success with our budgets here. This is within the bond program. And again, the bond program can only be spent for facilities. And there is a timeline, I think it's 3 years or something after the 5 years, that these bond funds have to be spent.
Anybody else? Can we turn them loose.
I probably gave you away more than you wanted to hear. It's a complicated subject.
Okay. Okay, Lisa.
So if Dr. Lance, if I could just make a couple of quick comments. The MBCon contract that was signed many years ago had a clause in it that allowed for MBCon to perform work for the district. This is not the first time that we've issued a CM at risk amendment to MBCon, so this is just an amendment to their existing contract for them to oversee the work. So we're also holding costs down by not actually hiring a contractor, an outside contractor to oversee the work. MBCon is going to assume that role for us under their original contract extension, the amount of that original contract extension. So this is a win-win for the district all around. And as you said, it's from bond savings that were accrued over the course of the last 4.5 years. So we're really excited, and we're proud of that. So I ask your permission to the board's approval for the action item.
Okay, moving along. Action item 12. The administration recommends the approval of contract awarded for construction management services for artificial turf project. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's the properly moved and second that we approve the aforementioned the aforementioned contract award for artificial turf project. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers? Opposers? None? Ayes have it. Motion
Thank you so
carries.
much. Thank you.
I didn't know you had that many people who were into football. I'm National Football League, that's it. Moving along, now we're, I can't see. Board superintendent comments or requests.
I just wanted to share that I wanted to commend the music programs at all of the schools where they had the band region competition this past week. Our students did a phenomenal job, and I'm just really proud of the music program at our Georgetown County School District schools.
Yeah, also the academic bowls, they were fantastic. And you know, we're talking about football fields. You know, you fill up those football fields on Friday night, which is wonderful. I wish we could have filled up the auditorium at Georgetown High School to see that academic performance of those students. So it was great, and I congratulate the students and the teachers.
I congratulate them too, and also Waccamaw Middle School band performance at the South Carolina School Board Association
Yes, that
was
was
outstanding.
phenomenal.
Right. Mr. Price, did we have, I'm sorry, Patty.
Go ahead.
Real quick, we have some people in the audience who received a promotion of some sort tonight?
I see Mr. Jenkins coming to the mic.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman Lance, members of the board, Superintendent Price, and district guests. We do have two new positions this evening. We have Miss Ivy Palmer, who is the new science coach for Georgetown County Schools. And we have Miss Lindsay Wyrick, who is the social studies coach for Georgetown County Schools.
I would like to request that we have at our next board meeting, prior to our contracts for the next school year, a complete kind of a financial of our ESSER money and our positions and how we have funded and where we are, so that we'll have a much better, and also our numbers for the upcoming school year. And that would be very helpful as we move forward with our budget, kind of a budget that we propose for the next school year. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, okay. I started to sneak by you, but it's all right. Let's go.
Thank you, Dr. Lance. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thanks to our improving status with regard to COVID-19, DHEC has made more updates to their school guidance, and we have as well, to our operating procedures. Mr. Walters will give a more detailed update at our next meeting, but the key points center around quarantining and masking. Unless we have a school with 2 consecutive weeks of 10% positive rates of students and employees, close contacts will no longer have to quarantine. Those who are positive or symptomatic will still follow the same protocols as before. As of today's report, we only have 9 total positives throughout our district. The other update is directed towards masks. Because our county is not in a high spread category, masks are no longer required or recommended by DHEC. They are now a personal choice. The State Department of Education also removed the mask requirement on all buses, so we have as well. Hopefully, we will be able to enjoy these improving trends throughout the rest of our school year. Congratulations to all of our talented singers who recently performed at the All-County Chorus Concert. We have some truly gifted students among us, and they put on a wonderful performance. As Dr. Cefr mentioned, and as well as others, congratulations to Georgetown High and Waccamaw Middle for winning this year's Academic Bowl competitions, and a special congratulations to Joshua Fulton from Georgetown High and Liam Chapman from Coastal Montessori for being the top scoring individuals in their respective category. Spring sports have begun, so you will see a lot of campus activities in the evenings from now into May. And we have 2 signature baseball tournaments that kick off this weekend with the IP Classic and the Coastal Invite. And finally, just a reminder that our next meeting will be 3 weeks from tonight rather than 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? If not,
Dr. Lance, I do want to add one more thing real quick. The Carvers Bay High School, they had a tournament, a softball tournament, girls softball, this past weekend, and it was outstanding. The community came together. They did a wonderful job with it.
Awesome.
anybody else? Without objection? Meeting's adjourned.
Okay.
Who on that?
I don't even know, because